Us developers shouldn't find design so hard, yet it is a little bit complicated. So this is why I'm doing this episode for a really good friend of mine called Catalin Pit, where we're going to be redesigning his blog. I'm going to take you through the whole process of me having a look at the current design as well as changing it up in Figma. The whole reason I'm doing this is because I think that knowing some fundamentals for design as developers can really help us do a much better job. This is why I'm putting together enhanceui. It's a book of design for developers that teaches you the fundamentals. It's just like TypeScript teaching you about colors and design theory and essentially how to do UI and UX. These basic principles will help you get a better job, they'll make sure that you do better work in general, and you can make more money. Let's jump in and have a look at Catalin's website today and see what we can do to make it better. Hey! Oh, Adrian, hey, what's going on? Have you heard about Reshot? No? It's a brand new website that allows you to do authentic, commercial, stock photography. No way. It is a game changer because it's not just the kind of stock photography you see all the time. Man, I'm always trying to find good photography, and finding stuff that is commercially available to be used is always so tough. It has stuff on, say, lifestyle or nature or other areas that is completely unique. You have to check it out. Yeah, man, I'm gonna have to check that out. That sounds really cool. Alright, I'm gonna add a link in the description below so you can have a look. Otherwise, I'll see you later. That Adrian. Alright, let's jump into Catalin's design. This is a design of Catalin Pit's website that I've created in Figma. This will allow us to quickly edit it. What I want to do is have a look at some of the styling that Catalin is currently using around his different social media. He does have his own YouTube channel here, where he does some really cool content. And I can tell straight away that he's using a few different colors here. We've got some dark tones as well as some greens and yellows. So I'm going to keep these in mind when I'm designing his site. The first thing I'm going to do is try and recreate the content that he's already using in the website. You want to adhere to the branding and the style that people have developed for themselves because this is a little bit of their own character. But I do want to simplify this. I've noticed here in the header, he has actually written out his name 2 times. There's a little bit of redundancy happening here. We can simplify this whole process by combining these 2 sections together into one main header. Then we can simplify the menu a little bit as well. Here for the menu, I found the font sizes were quite small, so what I've done is increase them. And for the main item that you're currently focused on, which in this case is the home page, we're also going to give this a background color so that it really stands out. This not only makes the fact that you're on the home page stand out, but it also draws attention to where the menu is, so that if people are looking for other pages, they'll notice that too. Finally, I can see that the max width for this page is quite narrow. So what I'm going to try to do is keep everything consistent. So in this case, I'm going to try and keep the menu consistent to the width of the main content of the page, which is about maybe say 900 to 1200 pixels here. There's another benefit to doing this. The social media on the right hand side is now closer together, and that stands out a little bit more by being part of that header. But we are missing a little bit of contrast here. So this is why I'm adding maybe a nice background tone here, maybe just a black color, since this is part of the theme that can overlay this header. This way the header can pop out a little bit more and stand out when we're looking at it. I'm not quite sure yet if this is the design aesthetic we want to go for, but this is more just us testing out different ideas. When you are designing, it's good just to play around with different elements to see how they look. The next thing I want to do is improve the news section a little bit. I'm going to do this by essentially adding in some of the imagery that we're already using when we click into this article. Right now, the content seems very dry with the fact that we only really have the title in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the photo above the text here, and that way it provides a little bit of context to what this article is about. When we do this, we probably want it to stand out a little bit as well. So this is where I'm thinking we can reuse the design aesthetic we already have with these really cool boxes. We can place these boxes around the article, and this way the article can be maybe something special. Maybe the first few articles could be, say, feature news. This is the first thing that you want people to notice when they view, because maybe the last time they checked they didn't see these articles. And since they have maybe a new image and a new title, they can stand out a lot more. I'm gonna see how many I can fit in here, and I think maybe we can fit about 3 of them in here, and we can maybe turn these into a slider, or we could have them as just large items that shrink down at responsive design, but for the time being they're just there to have a look how they work. Let's add a few extra ones in here just so that we get a bit of a unique feel and look of what this section can be as we're developing it out. There are some really good articles in here, and they also have some good images, but sometimes what you'll find is the text for these articles might be too long for the title. They might be maybe just a single line for one item, while 2 or 3 lines for another. When this happens, sometimes we have to essentially customize the title and add those little trailing dots, just so that the format of everything is consistent. When you have a consistent height and width, everything looks a lot more clean and polished. And sometimes you might notice that when titles push a box to be essentially a little bit higher, it doesn't look as good as if they're all the same size. So I always recommend making sure that you, I believe, concat the articles, or essentially shrink them down to be the same size as much as you can so that they stay consistent. Next, I want to still play around with this black color to see how we can make it look for the rest of the page. It's a difficult design aesthetic because here we have a bit of a light mode going on, and we also have a bit of the possibility of a dark mode where you could swap all these colors. Alternatively, you can use the black color to make different sections stand out too. So in this sense, you could, for example, have the black just as a little trailing line at the very top of the header, and this would allow it to perform different, well, this would allow it to essentially not stand out too much, but just allow a little bit of a visual cue to focus down on the page. Alternatively, I'm still having a look if we can keep that black color over the header section with the navigation to make it stand out. And between the two, I do still like when it's over, and I want to see if I can reuse that kind of a design for additional sections below. So now that we've got our feature news more or less done, and will other colors work? Now the other colors don't really work in this section. So we could sometimes add this background image also, because right now black is a difficult and harsh color is what I'm thinking here while I'm doing this section. And it doesn't seem to look as good if it's just plain black and white throughout the whole website. We have added a little bit of color with the images in the feature news, but I'd still love if this page had a little bit extra color. Now when I'm testing out maybe adding a background image to this black background, it just doesn't seem to work very well. It actually does look better when it's simply black. So I'm just going to keep it as black for the time being, and we'll see what else we can change here to possibly make it better. So sometimes as well, if that doesn't work in the header, we can try and use it in different sections. So I'm going to see if I can use this maybe in this next section where we essentially print out the rest of our news. In the center, it didn't look very good for this background image, and it looked a little bit better if we place it a little bit off to the left and a little bit off to the right. It's hard to tell though because we don't have any content in here yet, so the next thing I want to do is add a little bit of content into this section. We're going to try to see if reusing the same design aesthetic as we had before, where we've got these boxes, works. Now I've got a slight feeling that it might not work, simply because if you do reuse the same aesthetic throughout the website too many times, sometimes it just looks like a copy-paste, and it loses its unique attribute of being independent, and once you first see the header or the above the fold content, you don't really want to read the rest because it almost looks all the same. So this is where maybe I take away that background box. This way you can tell this is a different section with different styling and different types of news. I'm going to just copy paste some of the articles in here with longer titles, just to see how they look and feel. And so far I think that works quite well. The font sizes are more or less exactly the same, but I've just shrunk down the image there a little bit so that it fits a little bit off to the side. And I'm also still playing around with that black color to see how overlaying it over different sections looks and feels. So far, I think that does look pretty good. I like the overlay between the feature articles and this black section, and I think it does make it stand out quite well. Sometimes you can also add darker grays to the background of the page as a whole, and this allows the independent feature articles which have a white background box to stand out a little bit more. In this case, I found that didn't look really good, so I decided not to do that. Finally, I want to see if maybe shrinking these articles down so they fit around the same size as the max width of our page makes it look a little bit better. And personally, I do think that looks a little bit more clean. The only problem now is that it feels like there's almost too much content in this one section. In terms of we've got the feature articles, we have the news, we have all this metadata in there. It's just simply too much for the user. So instead of doing that, I'm thinking maybe we can just simply use, say, 2 articles rather than 3. This way, those 2 articles can stand out a lot more than 3, which might be a little bit overwhelming for the user. So I'm just going to place these 2 in here, and they seem to fit in perfectly, and that design aesthetic seemingly works a lot better with just the 2 articles and then the additional news. So far, I'm pretty happy with the design aesthetic. There are some slight changes I'd like to make. I'm finding that the background color for the black just simply is too harsh for these additional characters or this additional text. And because of that fact, I think it'll do a lot better if we just simply have a white background for the time being. We can always add some SVG shapes off to the sides and other stuff like that. But realistically, I think that this pretty much does it for a slight upgrade to the design aesthetic. And here we have the before and after for Catalin's website. I want to go through a couple of things so we can see what's changed. The very first thing I want to point out is the fact that what we've done is removed some of the redundancy that we have here in terms of the logo and the content. We've actually simplified this into one simple header plus navigation plus everything else you might want to do, such as social links and whatnot. This has made it much more seamless. We're essentially saving on almost 2 times as much space as we previously had by combining these 2 sections. The next thing we've done here is we've actually made the menu items a little bit bigger so that people will notice them and will also click on them. This means that when you are on this page, you immediately know you're on the home page because it also has a stronger contrast for that background color there of black with white text. Finally, we have the social media icons closer together on this header. Previously, they were so far apart that it's almost difficult to see them over at the far right hand side. Finally, we go into the news section. This is the most important section. The very first 2 articles here are usually the most important. They're usually the ones that are most featured and probably are first for a reason. So what we've done is we've made sure that they stand out a lot more. First, we've made sure their size is bigger and they're reusing that style that we have on the website. We've kept things more or less the same, but what we've done is we've also added this background image here for these photos. What we've also done here is we've added this image here, and this has allowed these articles to stand out a lot more. If we wanted to do some more to make them stand out as well, we could even add a slight description of maybe some of the content in there. But for the time being, I think this should be enough. And finally, we've made a tiny little change for the additional articles here, where we've also included the image. And this is simply because when there is an image, it just gives some context to what the article is about, and usually people are more likely to click on it. I think this is enough for a few simple changes. We do have more or less the same spacing because the spacing was good already, but realistically the main thing that I've tried to do here is a consistent padding and margin of 50 pixels throughout so that everything looks more or less well spaced. This was a lot of fun to do, and I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you have your own design that you want to submit for me to have a look at, maybe feature and redesign, submit it at the website. I'm going to link that in the description below. Otherwise, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, hit like and subscribe. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.